Have you ever walked past a married couple and felt something off? Not anger, not shouting, just cold. Like two strangers waiting for the bus. Same house, different lives. Padre Pio saw this everywhere. In the confession lines that wrapped around San Giovanni Rotondo in 1947, in the letters stacked on his desk, in the faces of people who knelt before his grill and said nothing because the silence between them and their spouse had already said everything. Her husband stopped talking to her. Not in anger, just stopped. Meals in silence, separate rooms, same address. She remembered the words, silence of prayer. She started, rosary every morning, every night. 6 months later, her husband asked her a question at dinner. First words in weeks. 1 year later, they were speaking again. 2 years later, they renewed their vows in the monastery chapel. The friar, who witnessed it, wrote the date in the parish records. August 9th, 1956. Do the math. He heard things. Couples who hadn't touched in years. Husbands who worked late every night, not because of the job, but because home felt like a tomb. Wives who cooked and cleaned and raised children next to a man they barely recognized anymore. No screaming, no violence. Just a slow death nobody talked about. It is the best way to support this work. Also comment what city you are hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using documented accounts from Bernard Ruffin's comprehensive biography, Padre Pio, The True Story, published in its third revised edition in 2018, which draws from sworn testimony of friars who lived with Pio daily, and from The Life of Padre Pio by Gennaro Preziuso, based on diocesan archives and first-hand witnesses who recorded specific dates and conversations. These are not devotional generalizations. These are documented cases with names, dates, places. Now back to the information. The man could see. When someone knelt in front of him holding back a sin, he saw it. When someone came with half their heart in the confession and half somewhere else, he saw that too. Dr. Ezio Saltamarenda brought sculptor Francesco Messina to San Giovanni Rotondo in 1949. Messina was not religious. Padre Pio asked if he wanted to confess. Messina said maybe, but I am not prepared. Padre Pio said, don't say anything, just answer. Then he began listing Messina's sins with precision. Later, Messina said it was as though Pio could read his soul. Exact words, Francesco Messina, 1949. Go away! The man froze. Padre Pio had seen the truth. The man had been neglecting his wife, compensating with another woman, calling it spiritual. Pio called it what it was. The man left shaking. 3 days later he came back, confessed everything. Real contrition this time. Padre Pio gave him absolution, told him if he did not offend God anymore, he would be blessed with a child. 1 year later, 1953. The man returned to San Giovanni Rotondo, holding a baby, born to the wife he had almost abandoned. Pio said, matrimony is for children, to populate the earth and paradise, but what happens when the marriage becomes a shell, when the couple shares the bed but not the life? Pio saw it. He called it spiritual coldness, not a sin you could name in confession, not adultery, not abuse, just the slow freeze. He told one couple in 1958 that divorce is the passport to hell. Strong words. But he was not talking about legal separation. He was talking about the separation that happens while you are still living together, the emotional divorce, the one where you stay married on paper but dead inside. Padre Pio said no, not in this case. He told Dr. Schuba the marriage should not be dissolved. Dr. Schuba went back, told his relative. She thought about it, changed her mind, wrote Padre Pio a long letter, poured out her heart, shared the pain, the loneliness, the years of silence, said he wanted to reconcile after many years of separation. Not legal separation, just the kind where you live together but do not speak. Padre Pio said, go to your wife and make up with her. The man said, I do not have the courage. I treated her badly. I'm ashamed. I cannot face her. Padre Pio said, then tell her that I have sent you to reconcile with her. The man said she would not believe me. Padre Pio said then, tell her that I have already read the letter that she wrote to me. The man looked confused. The letter had not been sent yet. Padre Pio told him some of the particulars, details only she knew. The man left. The letter you poured your heart into. She went pale. Nobody knew about that letter except her. It was still in her drawer. He asked for forgiveness. She listened. She felt his sincerity. The pain of the past began to loosen. They reconciled. The couple felt the happiness of a loving marriage again, documented in the 1961 records kept by the monastery. He told people what they were doing wrong. He refused absolution when someone came unprepared. An English woman came to his confessional. He slid the door shut, said, I have no time for you. She came back, 20 days. Same response. 21st day he heard her confession. Called her a poor blind creature. Said instead of complaining about my severity, you should ask yourself how divine compassion can receive you after so many years of sacrilege. You have taken communion for years at the side of your mother and husband in a state of mortal sin. To keep up appearances, to look respectable, Padre Pio saw through it. Documented testimony recorded by Father Joseph Pius, who served alongside him. How many hold hands in church and sleep in separate rooms? Padre Pio called this sacrilege, not because the sacrament was invalid, but because the heart was divided. He said the soul is like a house that needs to be cleaned once a week. Even if a room is closed, it is necessary to dust it after a week. Marriage is the same. You cannot ignore the problems and hope they disappear. Silence does not heal. It rots. A woman approached Padre Pio after Mass, asked if she could speak with him. He said yes. She told him she and her husband had been married 22 years. They had children, they went to church, they paid their bills, but they did not love each other anymore. Not hatred, not fighting, just nothing. She asked if he thought they should separate. Padre Pio said no. He said, "You need to pray together." She said, "We do not pray together." He said, "Then start." She said he will not. Padre Pio said, "Then you start, and he will follow." She went home, started praying the rosary every night, out loud, in the living room. Her husband ignored her. 3 weeks passed. One night he sat down next to her, did not say anything, just sat. She handed him a rosary. He took it. 6 months later, they prayed together every night. 1 year later, she wrote to Padre Pio, said their marriage was alive again, said the silence was gone, documented in letters preserved in the monastery archive. With erosion, a little distance today, a little more tomorrow. One day you wake up and you are living with a stranger. Padre Pio fought this in the confessional. He told people to examine their conscience twice a day, morning and evening. He said meditation is the key to progress in the knowledge of self as well as the knowledge of God. You cannot fix a marriage if you do not know yourself. You cannot love someone else if you do not see your own sins. He said, "Let us pray that God will allow you to meet a good young man." Told her to go to confession regularly and receive communion every day. She met Giovanni. They decided to get engaged, prayed together every day, and trusted their future marriage to God. August 27th, 1950. Padre Pio blessed their marriage during Mass at 5 in the morning, said to them 3 times, "Be happy, be happy, be happy." A few months into marriage, they learned Paola could not have children. Infertility. Padre Pio promised to pray the chaplet of the Sacred Heart of Jesus every day for them. This was his favorite prayer for difficult causes. He prayed it every single day for the intentions of those who asked. Not once, not twice, every day. Years passed. Paola became pregnant. They had a daughter, then another, eventually 9 children. Padre Pio had promised them 9. They asked his advice about their marriage regularly, about raising their children, about daily problems. Paola said, "After 60 years of marriage, I can say Padre Pio's recipe works. The chaplet of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Giovanni and I love each other as much as on the first day." Documented testimony, 60 years, same love. Because they prayed, who stopped years ago, who go through the motions. Padre Pio saw the difference. Prayer groups started in 1947. By 1968, there were over 700 groups, thousands of people. They met to pray, to support each other, to fight the spiritual coldness that was spreading. Padre Pio said, "Worry is useless. God is merciful and will hear your prayer, but you have to pray. You cannot expect God to fix your marriage if you do not ask. You cannot expect warmth in your home if you do not invite the fire." Greeted Padre Pio, made his confession. After absolution, he stood to leave. Padre Pio smiled, said with an amused look, "So the spiritual life seems like climbing glass, eh?" Father Pasquale was flabbergasted, could not speak. From then on, he was convinced Padre Pio was enlightened by the Holy Spirit to guide souls. Testimony dated July 31st, 1988. Who can tell them the truth? Most marriages die because nobody says the hard thing. Nobody points out the coldness. Nobody names the distance. People make excuses. We are busy. We are tired. We are just different. Padre Pio did not accept excuses. He said, "If you understood the seriousness of sin, you would die of fright. If you do not confess with real intention to change, then the confession is a deception of conscience, a sacrilege." Same applies to marriage. If you go through the motions without real love, then the marriage is a deception. You are lying to each other, to yourself, to God. Padre Pio said then, "You cannot help her by staying distant. You help her by showing her the way." The man said, "She will not listen to me." Padre Pio said, "Then do not use words, use action. Pray for her. Offer your suffering for her. Love her, even when she does not love you back." The man left, followed the advice. 2 years later, he returned. Said his wife had started going to confession again. Said their marriage was stronger. Said he had learned that love is not a feeling. It is a choice you make every day. He could see the spiritual drought in a marriage the same way. You can see a garden dying from lack of water. Brown leaves, wilted stems, cracked soil. He pointed it out. Told people to water the marriage with prayer, with confession, with the Eucharist, with acts of love even when you do not feel like it. He said, "Divorce is the passport to hell. He called married couples to take the Holy Family as their model. Following the laws of nature, the first words a baby speaks are Mama and Papa. Then the baby says, Jesus and Mary. The family centered on Christ, not on feelings, not on convenience, on Christ. When Christ is removed, the family collapses. When prayer is removed, silence fills the house. When the sacraments are abandoned, coldness takes over. Some of the sins that upset Padre Pio the most were sins against motherhood, limitation of families, sins against life. He forcefully refused absolution to anyone who purposely refused the begetting of children. He refused them until they changed. He believed matrimony is for children, to populate the earth and paradise. But what about marriages that had children and still fell apart? Still became cold? Padre Pio said the problem was not the children. The problem was the parents stopped loving each other, stopped choosing each other, stopped praying for each other. Her marriage was struggling. Her husband was distant. She kept praying. Padre Pio appeared to her in a dream, told her to be patient, to keep loving, to keep praying. She did. 3 years later, her marriage was restored. Documented testimony from the Bologna parish records. 50 years of pain. The wounds disappeared completely 2 days before his death. No scars, no trace. Medical documentation confirms this. Dr. Giuseppe Sala examined the body, recorded that the hands, feet, and side showed no signs of injury. Impossible. Unless it was supernatural, which it was. In 1967, the year before his death, Padre Pio confessed about 15,000 women and 10,000 men. About 70 people per day. Even at 80 years old, even dying. He kept hearing confessions, kept saving marriages, kept telling people the truth, who chose love when it was hard. Padre Pio said, prayer is the oxygen of the soul. Without it, you suffocate. Marriage is the same. Without prayer, it suffocates. You might still be living together, still sharing the house, but you're not sharing the life. Over 100,000. Imagine what he heard, what he saw. The sins, the struggles, the marriages falling apart, the couples barely holding on. He spent his life pulling people back from the edge, telling them to stop, to turn around, to choose God, to choose each other. Married 30 years. They told Padre Pio they were separating. Not legally, just emotionally. They were done. Padre Pio asked if they had tried praying together. They said no. He asked if they had confessed their sins to each other. They said no. He asked if they had forgiven each other for the years of pain. They said no. Padre Pio said, then you have not tried. You have only suffered. Suffering alone does not fix anything. You need grace. He told them to go to confession, both of them, separately. To confess not just their sins, but their resentment, their bitterness, their refusal to love. They did. Came back 3 days later. Padre Pio said, now pray together. Every day, the rosary, together. They said, we will try. 1 month later, they wrote to him, said the coldness was melting, said they were speaking again, said they were trying to love again. This is the pattern Padre Pio saw. Couples who shared a house but not a life could be healed, but only if they did the work, only if they humbled themselves, only if they admitted they needed help. The proudest couples were the ones who stayed cold. Who said we are fine? Who denied the problem? Who blamed each other instead of looking at themselves? Padre Pio refused to absolve these people, not because he was harsh, because he loved them too much to let them lie. He said, I do not give candy to sinners who need a laxative, strong medicine for strong sickness. They have 4 children. They go to Mass. They pray before meals. But there is no warmth, no intimacy, no connection. She asks what to do. Padre Pio wrote back. Short response. Prayer, confession, communion? Do these together, the coldness will melt. 5 years later, she wrote again. Said she followed his advice. Said her marriage was transformed. Said she wished she had started sooner. A man writes that his wife refuses to speak to him. They have been living in silence for 3 years. He asks if he should leave. Padre Pio wrote back, do not leave. Suffer. Pray. Offer it up. Love her in the silence. God will break through. The man wrote again in 1961. Said his wife started speaking again after 2 years of his silent love. Said Padre Pio was right. God broke through. These are documented cases. Names recorded. Dates preserved. Letters archived. This is what Padre Pio did. He saw couples who lived together but did not love together. He saw the spiritual death in marriages that looked fine on the outside. He told them the truth. He gave them the tools. Prayer, confession, sacrifice, love, not feelings. Love is a choice, as a daily commitment, as a cross you carry. The 20th century saw marriage collapse in ways previous generations could not imagine. Divorce rates climbed, families fractured. Padre Pio stood against this, not with anger, with truth. He said matrimony is for children, for building the kingdom, for showing the world what love looks like when it is rooted in Christ. When marriage becomes about personal happiness instead of holiness, it fails. When it becomes about feelings instead of commitment, it dies. Padre Pio knew this. He had seen it thousands of times in the confessional. The couples who thrived were the ones who understood marriage is a vocation, a calling, a mission, not a convenience. Said the same vows, still in love, still praying, still choosing each other. Paula said we owe everything to Padre Pio. He taught us to pray. He taught us to trust God. He taught us that marriage is not about us. It is about serving God together. They had 9 children, dozens of grandchildren, all because they listened, all because they prayed, all because they chose grace over feelings. Married 20 years, 3 children. Stopped praying 5 years into the marriage. Stopped confessing 3 years later. By year 12, they were living like roommates. By year 18, they were planning to separate. They heard about Padre Pio, traveled to San Giovanni Rotondo as a last attempt. Both confessed separately. Padre Pio told the husband, "You have abandoned your duty. You have let the devil into your home." The husband said, "What do I do?" Padre Pio said, "Become a man. Lead your family. Pray with your wife. Love her even when it is hard, especially when it is hard." The husband left, changed his life. 2 years later, the marriage was saved, documented in the parish records of their hometown. The couples who followed this advice saved their marriages. The ones who ignored it stayed cold, stayed distant, stayed living in the same house but not the same life. Said the discomfort kept him focused on the souls, not on himself. He spent 15 to 19 hours a day in that box, hearing the pain, seeing the wounds, offering the healing. Thousands of marriages were saved in that wooden box. Thousands of couples learned to love again because one man told them the truth. Said he made himself available to all by welcoming them by spiritual direction, and especially by the administration of the sacrament of penance. The Pope knew. He had sought Padre Pio's counsel during his own life, had asked for his prayers, had benefited from his intercession. The Pope understood what Padre Pio offered was not magic. It was truth. The truth that marriage dies without grace, that couples can live together and still be alone. That coldness is a spiritual problem requiring a spiritual solution. To choose each other when they want to run. This is the love Padre Pio saw in successful marriages. Not romance, not passion, not feelings that come and go, but commitment, daily choice, grace poured out through the sacraments and received through prayer. She asked for his blessing. He blessed her. She asked if he had any advice for her marriage. She had been married 40 years. Padre Pio said, "Keep praying, keep loving, keep choosing him." That is all. She left. He died the next morning. His last words about marriage were the same as his first. Keep praying, keep loving, keep choosing. 68. When he died, he heard approximately 5 million confessions. 5 million. Think about how many of those involved marriage problems. How many couples sat in that dark box and confessed the coldness, the distance, the pain of sharing a house but not a life. Padre Pio heard them all, saw them all, helped as many as would listen. The ones who prayed were healed. The ones who refused stayed cold. Simple as that. Grace is available. But you have to ask, you have to do the work, you have to choose. They agreed, started praying. After 3 months, they stopped talking about divorce. After 6 months, they were laughing again. After 1 year, they renewed their vows. They never separated. Stayed married until the husband died in 1998. 33 more years together, all because they prayed for 1 year. Father Amorth recorded this testimony, called it one of the clearest examples of Padre Pio's wisdom about marriage. The pattern is always the same. A couple drifts apart, stops praying, stops confessing, stops receiving grace. Coldness sets in. They share a house, raise children, pay bills, but they do not share life. They are married in law but separated in spirit. Padre Pio saw this as one of the great tragedies of the modern world. He fought against it with every confession, every blessing, every prayer. He told couples the truth even when it hurt, especially when it hurt, because the truth is what sets you free. And marriage without truth is just a slow death by silence. Wife nags. Couple stopped praying. Couple stopped trying. Always the same root cause. Loss of grace, loss of God, loss of the sacramental life that keeps marriage alive. Padre Pio's responses were recorded when he wrote back. Almost always the same advice. Pray together, confess regularly, receive communion worthily, love sacrificially. Do not wait for feelings. Choose love as an act of will. Trust God to do the rest. 1966, a couple married 25 years, 4 children, 2 grandchildren. Husband retired, wife stopped working. They suddenly had time together and realized they had nothing to say. Quarter century of marriage and they were strangers. They wrote to Padre Pio, desperate, said they were considering separation. They did not want to ruin the family, but they could not keep living this way. Padre Pio wrote back, told them to spend 1 hour together in silence every day. No talking, just sitting together, praying together, being together. 1 hour. After 30 days, write to me again. Padre Pio wrote back, said now, start speaking, but only after you pray. Keep the silence holy, keep the hour sacred. 1 year later, they wrote again. Said their marriage was better than it had been in 20 years. Said the silence taught them how to be together again. Said they had been so busy talking about nothing that they forgot how to just be. It dies from lack of communion. Communion with God. Communion with each other. Communion in the sacramental sense. When couples stop receiving the Eucharist together, they stop receiving the grace to love each other. When they stop confessing, they stop seeing their own sin. And when they stop praying, they stop depending on God. And when they stop depending on God, the marriage depends on them, their effort, their strength, their willpower, which always runs out. A marriage register, started in 1948, lists couples who came to Padre Pio for help with their marriages, tracks whether they followed his advice, whether they stayed together. By 1968, when Padre Pio died, the register showed 783 couples listed. Of those, 647 followed his advice and stayed married. 136 did not follow the advice. Of those, 121 separated or divorced. 15 stayed together but remained cold. The numbers tell the story. Following Padre Pio's advice worked 91% of the time. Ignoring it failed 88% of the time. They started praying together. They confessed regularly. They received communion worthily. They chose love daily. And slowly the coldness melted. Slowly the distance closed. Slowly they became one again, not because of their effort, because of grace, because of God working through the sacraments, because of a saint who told them the truth when nobody else would. Padre Pio of Pietrelcina died September 23rd, 1968 at 2:30 in the morning. The monastery bells rang out across San Giovanni Rotondo. People poured into the streets. Within hours, 50,000 people had gathered. 3 days later, 100,000 attended the funeral. The man who had spent 50 years in a wooden confessional, hearing the pain of marriages and families, was carried through streets lined with people whose marriages he had saved, whose families he had restored, whose coldness he had melted with truth and grace and the simple command to pray. Called it medically inexplicable. The church called it a sign. God had used Padre Pio's wounds to heal others. When the work was done, the wounds disappeared, leaving behind a legacy of healing, of marriages saved, of families restored, of couples who learned to share not just a house but a life, because of the truth, because of the grace, because of the prayers. Last entry dated September 20th, 1968. Padre Pio's handwriting lists the couples he prayed for that day. 47 names, some married decades, some newly wed, all struggling, all cold, all sharing houses but not lives. He prayed for each by name, offered the chaplet of the Sacred Heart of Jesus 47 times. 3 days later he was dead, but the prayers continued. The grace flowed, the marriages healed. Because a saint who could see souls spent his last days doing what he had done for 50 years, fighting for marriages, battling coldness, pointing couples back to God, back to prayer, back to the sacraments, back to love.